All right, welcome to Advanced Python and Production Development. This is an advanced course for students who have taken Python and backend development course previously or have experience with Python. We are going to be looking at the basic part of Python just in the first 3 weeks, and then we're going to look at the basics of MySQL and then move into the advanced topics and look at how to set up our environments and then the dependency management, and then we build a final project which is going to be a pregnancy registration and maternal reporting system. Now, the grade for this course is weighted. The duration is 18 weeks. We will have 5 practical assignments. Assignment 1 is due sometime in the coming days. We'll have 5 of those assignments. We're going to have 1 group assignment. We're going to have 2 MCQ quizzes, and then a final exam and a final independent project. Each of the assignments takes 10% of the total score. The group assignment takes 10% of the total score. The quizzes, each of the quizzes takes 10% of the total score, and the exam takes 10%, and the final independent project will take 20% of the score. So we're in part 1 of the course where we are looking at or rushing over the basics of Python, and after that we'll look at the basics of MySQL, and then we're going to part 2 where we're going to look at the advanced topics in Python, and then we're going to go into production development in part 3. So before coming here, I expect that you've watched all your pre-recorded videos from weeks 1 to 3. We're going to combine those 3 weeks, rush over some things. I'm not going to go into details of each of those topics because it is expected that you understand Python to that level and that you watch those videos. I'm going to only show you how to set up your system, and then we're going to look at a high-level overview of all of the topics that we've discussed in the first 3 weeks. Okay? So the first thing to do is to download Python. You can refer to lesson 1 of week 1 pre-recorded video to see how you can download and install Python and upgrade your version of pip. Basically, you go to the Python website, and it's at python.org/downloads. You download the latest version of Python for your operating system, install that, and after installation, you want to go to your command line and upgrade the version of pip you have. And that upgrade, I think the command is Python 3 pip install upgrade pip. So if the version of pip you have, which is a package manager for Python, if the version you have is not the current version, is going to upgrade it. Pip comes installed by default when you install Python, and so when it's already the highest version, it gives me requirements already satisfied, like I have there. For the live classes, I'm going to do something different so you can have a variety of learning materials. I have asked you to install Visual Studio Code or PyCharm or any IDE of your choice that you love to work with. But I'm going to show you how to install Jupyter Lab, and I'm going to be using Jupyter Lab for our live classes. Now, to install Jupyter Lab, you type pip install Jupyter Lab like this. And if it's not installed, it's going to install. If it's installed, requirements already satisfied, like I have here. Once Jupyter Lab is installed, every time you want to launch Jupyter Lab, you come to your command line and just type Jupyter Lab like this, and then it will open with your browser. And then we have Jupyter Lab open here in the browser. Okay? So one of the first things you will see for you is you're going to have a first page or maybe a default directory. And let's say you want to select a directory to display. You want to have your files in a particular directory. Let's say I want to have all my files in this Live 3. So I'm going to select that. It's on my desktop, and the name of the folder is Live 3. So that's what you do. You click on this folder icon here, and then you select what folder or what directory you want to use from your system to store your files. Now, there are different types of files. We can have a Python file, we can have a notebook, or we can have a terminal, and we can have a markdown file also. And I'm going to show you how to use each of these, and we're going to be writing our codes with Jupyter Lab. The reason we are going to use this is when you are learning, this is more convenient because you test each line of code as you write. And for those who have never used this before, you're going to see how convenient it is. Now, the first thing we want to learn is how to run a Python file that is not a notebook. So let's say I want to create a new Python file. I'll go to File, New, and Python file. It automatically creates a file that is not titled. I can rename to give it a name. Let's say intro is the name of this. It has the extension .py. We know from the basics that all Python files have the .py extension. So let's say we want to have a Python file. We just want to write the code in this file. Like this. Now we have this code on this file. We want to run this file. We need a terminal to run this. So I'll say new terminal. Now when you're on your terminal, you want to navigate to the directory where you have your file. For me, it is here, desktop live 3. So I'll say cd desktop / live 3, and I'm in that directory. So for me to run a Python file when I'm in my directory, I'll type Python 3 and then the name of the file, which is intro.py. So what I want the file to do is to print hello world, and it's printed on the screen. So when you get to advanced where you just have Python scripts and you want to run them, you only run on the terminal. You just say Python 3 and the name of that file or that script to run the Python file. But this is not what we are going to use. This is one thing you need to know when you go deeper into advanced topic where you just have a script you always want to run to execute something. Okay? Any question before I go further? Okay, so we've seen how to do this. The next thing is how to use a notebook. So do file, new, notebook. Now I'm going to select this. It's untitled. I want to rename it. And let's say this is going to be life1.this. So I've named this. When you have your notebook, for each line, you can type a Python code, enter, to see if it's printing out the results, and then you can have all of this. You can use this to write notes to describe what you're doing. You can use this for testing purposes before you actually go to write a whole file of Python. And sometimes for your assignments, you might prefer to submit a notebook like this. Before we go any further, let's just look at the syntax of Python. Python statement just ends with a new line. So you see that I said print hello world. For Python, all you need to do is to start a new line, and then the statement is terminated. When I go to a new line here and I say print welcome, I've terminated this one by just starting a new line. And when I shift and enter, it runs and prints what I want here. So I can test the code, and then gives me another field to write my new code that I want to test. So you can always test your code sequentially like this when you use a notebook, for those who have never used notebooks before. Okay? So the syntax is that it ends with a new line. Like those of you who did course 1 will see that we always terminate JavaScript with a semicolon and all of that. But Python, just write your code, start a new line, and it ends with a new line. It relies on indentation. And when I say it relies on indentation, it means that when you write something, for instance, if, let's say we have a variable called x is equal to 10, we have y is equal to 12, and then we want to say if x is greater than y, we want to do something. Now, relying on indentation means that the space before your code starts is the indentation. If that space is not there, it will result in an error. The number of spaces you use depends on your styling convention that you want to use. It doesn't matter. But what matters is that within the same block of code, the number of spaces must be the same. So if I do this, it automatically starts the space. Let's say I want to say print x is greater than y. And then if I do enter, this does not indent. And I'll say else, and I want it to do something. And if it's not x is not greater than y, we want it to say print x is less than y. Now, because this is not indented, we're going to have an error when I run, and the error is on the else block. Now, if it's indented, when we have else, we're not even supposed to use this brace like this. I was just trying to generate an error for you. We put a colon for Python, and then we see it goes where it's supposed to be. Like, it depends on indentation, and it is still going to have an error because this is not indented correctly. We need to have, this is printing with Jupyter Notebook, but normally we should just have it indented the same way like this. So Python relies on indentation, and whenever you write your code, you should know that after an if statement, what you want it to do is going to be indented like that until it finishes. And when you do something outside of this, you know this is outside of the if else block, it's no longer indented. You can say the end like this, and then to print the end because this is outside of that indentation, so it works like this. So as you go along and as you practice, you understand what indentation, where you indent and where you don't indent, where you start from the beginning of the line and where there has to be an indentation. But usually it's within a block. If a particular statement falls within a block, a function, you need to indent those code like that. We have comments in Python. Like I want to say, I want to write something. I want to say checks the value of x and y. But I don't want this to result in an error, which it will, because it doesn't understand what this is. But this is the comment I want to just write for me to know what this is doing. Single line comments in Python, we can use the pound sign like this. That is exempted from execution, and I no longer have an error. So whenever you write your code, it is important you leave comments to explain the code and the logic or reasoning while writing the code. You want to also use it to prevent a block of code from execution during testing. And this is how we write single line comments. If you want to write a whole text or a whole definition of something, you start with 3 quotes and you end with 3 quotes. And between this, you can write a whole multiple blocks and lines of text. Let's just say this is the comment. And I want to write this on multiple lines. Now this is executed from execution. It's multiple lines of code. And so when you start writing large code base and you want to write documentation, leave notes, describe something, leave to-dos, you can do things like this for comments in Python. Okay. So we've been talking about variables, but we've not defined what a variable is. A variable is just like a container that we use to store values. So let's say we are working with a value, the number 5. We don't want to keep saying number 5 all the time. Number 5 is not practical. Let's say we are working with a value, first name, for instance. First name can be anything. Let's say people just change their names all the time, and you want to keep updating that name. You want to store it in a variable so that you don't have to look at everywhere you use that name to start changing. You just want to change the value held in the variable first name, which is the container that stores the data value. So let's say first name is equal to Mildred, for instance. We have this first name is equal to Mildred. First name is the name of a variable, and Mildred is the value that is stored in the first name variable. We can name our variable anything we want. it can contain letter, numbers, and underscore, but it must not start with a number. There are several rules for naming variables. They can start with a letter and an underscore, but not a number. Spaces are not allowed between variable names. So if you want to have a long name, you can use underscore to join words together, to separate words like this. You don't want to use Python keywords. Let's say print is a keyword. Print cannot be a name of a variable in Python. And then you want to also keep to a convention of having descriptive names or short names. That will not result in an error, but it's just a good coding convention that you want to use. So that's the definition of a variable. Later on, we are going to look at how to store multiple values in a single variable. Okay. Now let's quickly look at data types. Any question first? Okay, so let's look at the data types that we have. We have string data type. String is anything quoted like this, either in single quotes or in double quotes. It's called the string. Now, the problem we have with strings is when we have a text with an apostrophe or with quotation marks in between. So let's give an example of this string. Let's say string is equal to, let's say, sentence is equal to, and the sentence, let's make a sentence. This is Mildred's book, and then we print sentence. Now this will work well because we use the double quotes outside and we use a single quote as the apostrophe here, so nothing is going to be wrong. In the event we say we're writing with single quotes, then we're going to have an error because this sees this as the end of the quotes, and because it sees this at the end, it can't interpret the rest, and then this will result in an error. And when I enter again, we have the error here. How do we solve errors like this when the surrounding quote matches quotes that are within the text? You can put something like a backslash before the offending character. When you enter again, it prints well and there is no error. So there are two ways we can do this. Either we make sure the surrounding quote is the double quote if we have an apostrophe in it, or we just use a backslash before the offending text. The same thing is if you have a text with a quote like this. Let's say we want to quote this, and the surrounding quote is quoted like this. We're going to have a problem here because the surrounding quote matches the quote inside. Before the offending character, you always put a backslash like this, and then when we enter, we have no problem. It is quoted like we want it to be quoted. We have other data types like numeric types with int, strings, and complex. I want you to watch your pre-recorded videos to look at those types. They are not difficult. We can't go into deep into basic topics. But when you want to look at the data types, you need to understand the data types in more details for you to be able to work with a lot of complex topics that we're going to be heading into soon. Okay? When you have data types and you want to look at the type of the data, or you have a data and you want to see the type, let's say I want to know what type this sentence is, I can just print type, and this is called a function in Python. The type function, we use type, and then in a pair of parentheses we put the name of the variable whose type we want to know, and it tells us that this is of type string, str. So if it's a number, let's say for instance I have something like x is equal to 5, y is equal to 3.4, z is equal to 1a, and I want to print type x, type y, and type z to tell us what data type the all belong to. Type Y, type Z, enter. Sorry. So the complex is, we have the real parts and the imaginary parts. You can watch your pre-recorded video to look at the type of complex, but I just wrote a whole number, which is an integer, a decimal number, which is of type float, and this complex number, which has a number and a letter, ij. J is always the imaginary part of this number and is of type complex. We have other data types. We have collection types, lists, tuples, dictionaries, and sets. And you can watch your videos to look at those types. We're going to touch lightly on them. This is just the first life lesson introduction. I don't want to go so deep so you don't get overwhelmed with too much information, but you need to watch your pre-recorded videos, rewatch this video, get yourself comfortable with the basics, and then we fly higher to the parts that are more complex. When you have strings, we have different methods that we use with strings to manipulate strings. Let's look at how to use a few methods, and then I want you to read more about string methods. Refer to your pre-recorded videos. You can research online to look at other string methods. But basically, string methods are used to manipulate string or change strings. Let's say, for instance, I have a string called first name. My first name is Mildred. And then I have last name, and the last name. I want to print out my first name. So I'm printing out first name. So it's going to print out the value held in the variable first name, and I'll have that printed to the page. Now let's say I've written this in all lowercase like this. And I want to have different string methods to change the different capitalizations of this. I can print first name dot title to make sure that the first letter of that first name is an uppercase letter, like that. If I want it to be in all uppercase, I can say dot upper. And if I want it to be in all lowercase, I will say dot lower, which is already in lower, like that. We have several other string methods. Research them, try to work with them, and see how they are used to manipulate strings. I am not going to look at that in further detail than this. Let's look at the concept of loops in Python. When we talk about loops, we are talking about executing a block of code over and over again, as long as a condition is true or until a condition evaluates to true. We have the while loop, we have the for loop. Let's say we have a variable called I, and I has the value of 5. So we want to say, while using the while loop, I is less than, let's say 10. We want to do something. Let's say we want to print I, and then when we print, we want to increment the value of I, and then we want it to keep printing until the condition I is less than 10 evaluates to true. So we want it to print 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When it gets to 9, and 9 is less than 10, it prints. But when it gets to 10, 10 is not less than 10, it stops printing. And so we print 5 to 9 printed. So the syntax is while the iterator we have is less than whatever condition we set there, we want to print out. So this is a basic example. But in real life situation, let's say you have a registration form and you want to look at, for instance, everybody whose age is less than 18, you want to print it to the page, or everybody whose age is 18 and above, you want to print. You can set I to 18. And you say, while I is less than, let's say I want to print ages between 18 and 25. less than 25, print I. We want to see all of them. Maybe not I you are printing the names of the people who are between age 18 and 25. So you put all your logic in between. While I is less than 25, maybe you have a variable that stores the first name of the people. You say print first name for those people whose age is less than 25, like that, and you have that printed 18 to 24. If you want it to print 25 inclusive, you include these to 26, and then you have 25 inclusive. So those are the kind of scenarios, and when we start building our project, we are going to implement this in different scenarios. That's why you need to understand the basic topics, and then we begin to apply them in development. We also have the for loop, and before we look at the for loop, let's look at lists in Python. We want to store multiple values in a single variable. Let's say I want to list all my favorite movies, for instance. Let's say I have a variable called favorite movies underscore is equal to, we create a list with a square bracket like this, and then I'll say is equal to the Godfather. Let's just name random movies. Let's say Goodfellas. I will put okay, let's stop here. So I have a list of my favorite movies, and I want to loop through this to print out each of this movie that I've created here. For loops in Python are written for, we need an iterator. We can name it anything we want. I'll say X is the name. So for X in that list of favorite movies, for X in favorite movies, I want to do something. I just want to print out X. And when I do this, it prints out all of the favorite movies. Now, what's the logic behind this? So while we see this easy, there's a lot of heavy lifting going behind how Python is written. We always need an iterator, say for X. So it's just like you have a ruler, for instance, and you have a line of items, and you're counting them, each one, you touch each one with the ruler while you count them. So that ruler is like the iterator that says, I've touched number 1, I've touched number 2. So when I touch it, print out the name. When I touch the next one, print out the name. So that's the logic. For X is the iterator in favorite movie. So X is going to come here and say, I'm in the favorite movie now, I'm X, print out this. Now I've printed this out, X, I'm going here, and this becomes X. I'll print this out. I'm coming here, print out X until I get to the last. And then when I get to the last, I finish printing, and that's all. So that's the logic behind the for in loop in Python. We can also choose to print out maybe one of the movies, and we use like index positions, which starts from 0 in Python. When we look at this, this is at index position 0, 1, 2, 3. So the last item here is at index position 3, but it has 4 items in the list. If we want to know the number of items in the list, we use then favorite movies like this, and it tells us there are 4 items in the list. If we want to print out the second item here, which is going to be index position 1, because this is 0, 1, we are going to print it out like this. Favorite movies 1, and it prints out the one at index position 1. So you can watch your pre-recorded videos to look at different ways of working with lists, different methods we can use with lists for us to be able to change the order of the list and see everything we can do with lists, how to manipulate lists and how to slice and all of that. Okay, let's say we have 2 different lists and we want to use them in something. Let's say I have a list of colors, for instance, and I say this color is a list of, let's randomly select colors. Red, we have green, we have this blue, and yellow. And then we have a list of cars. And this list consists of names of cars. Let's say Honda. Let's say Mazda. Let's have Mercedes. And let's have Toyota. Okay, so we have 4 colors and 4 cars. Let's say we want to make a statement like the Honda is red, or the Toyota is yellow in color. We want to match them like that. These are some of the applications of lists that we usually have. We have a method we call the zip method that we can use to zip the 2 lists together. So let's say X is equal to zip like this, and we're going to be zipping cars and colors. Once it is zipped, we'll say for car colors, you can name it anything you want. These are iterators in X, because we zipped this now. We want to print out. So there are other ways we can print. We can use formal string. We can use different methods. Refer to your lesson notes. But I think this is one of the assignment questions is similar to this. So I'm trying to do this to make your assignments easier. You will do print. Now we can use a placeholder %s to represent a string. We want to say, we'll replace this with the car. We'll say this string is this string in color like this. And then at the end here, we want to say the % here is going to be replaced with the values in cars and in colors like this. So because we are looping through, we want it when it loops through, it wants to replace the first one to say Honda is red in color. Then it goes there, Mazda is green in color. So we use the %s as a string placeholder there, and then we use it here. There are different format strings you can use to print this in a different way. I recognize I didn't use this in the pre-recorded video, so I'm doing this now for you to see. And so it prints it out just the way we want it printed out. We have another collection type we call dictionaries. Now, dictionaries are name value pairs and is a collection that is ordered. It is changeable. It does not allow duplicate. So when you try to put duplicate value in a dictionary, it just updates the existing value and do not replace or do not duplicate or have it twice with the same key. So when we say key value pairs, like we have in list, we have red. Red does not have a name. It's just index position 0. But with dictionaries, we can name each of those positions. So let's say we want to have the details of a person. We want to store these details in a dictionary. We use a pair of curly braces like this. They are in key value pairs. So the key here is quoted and is called first name. We want to now put the value of the first name, let's say Mildred. We want another key, last name. And we want the value of the last name to be so put a comma after each one, and then let's say we have another value, age, and the age here is, let's say, 10. So we're done. We've created a dictionary called person, and we have all the details of the person there, the first name, the last name, and the age. If we want to loop through the dictionary, we can say for X in person, print X, like we do, to loop through first name, last name, age. This is only going to give you all of the keys. But you can say print X dot value. I think it's dot values. Let's see, I think it's dot values like that for X in person. Print X dot values, no, dot value. So we're going to look at that later if you want to print out the values, where we look at the keys and the values, and then we'll print out the values of that is held in the keys. Okay, so for x in person.keys, print out the values, things like that. We're going to look at that later. I won't confuse you right now. So we have this dictionary like this, and we want to access each item of the dictionary, not everything at once. We can do something like print, and we want to print person, and we put a pair of square brackets, and we want to print the value held in the first name key like this, and it's going to print that value here. So you access it by calling the name of the dictionary a square bracket and the name of the key to print that value out. Let's say we have a sentence. This is a new done like this, and we want to do something so that it will take each of the letters here and make each letter a key, and then give the value to be the number of occurrence of the letter. We have different ways we can do this. I'm going to show you a long way, and when you get comfortable, you can see that you can do that with only 2 to 3 lines of code. So we have a sentence like this. The first thing we want to do is to create a new dictionary, let's say new string, and we'll create an empty dictionary to hold that key value pair that we want to create. We want to use a for loop, for instance. We'll say for, let's say I is the iterator in the sentence. We want to do something. We want to get the keys, and we want to save these keys, and then we want to get the values, and then we save the values. So let's say keys will be equal to new string dot keys. Another logic we are looking at now is that if the iterator I is already in keys, we want to increase the number for the value. If not, we don't want to increase the number for the value. So you first of all think about the logic like this. I want to look at the sentence. I want each letter of the sentence to be the key, and then the value should be the number of occurrence of that. So T appeared once, I want T to be a key, the value to be 1. H appeared once, I want H to be a key, the value 1. I appeared twice, I here, I want I to be the key, the value to be 2, something like that. So I want to say for I in sentence. So I want to loop through all of this first, and then I want to look at what the keys will be. I'll store it in the keys variable. And then I want to say if I in keys, I want to say the new string now, the value of the new string. So new string I, so the value held in the ith position of the new string plus equal to 1, because the value we're calculating is the number of occurrence. That's why we're adding plus equal 1. So this is the same thing as saying new string is equal to new string plus 1. I mean, the ith position is equal to new string I plus 1. So if you watch your week 1 lessons, you'll see when we dealt with different operators, you'll see why we shortened it like this. Else, we want to do something. Else, we want new string I to be equal to 1. And then at the end, we want to print new string. So if all is well, it is going to count the occurrence of each of these letter and store it as the value using the letter as it, like this. So we store it in an empty dictionary. So T is 1, H is 1, I is 2, S appeared twice, and like that. We have a space that appeared 4 times, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. We calculated that too. We have A appearing twice here, and I think this is one of your assignment questions also, and this will help you to know how to manipulate dictionaries. So when you watch your pre-recorded video, it has details of all of these collection types, list, dictionaries, tuple, and sets that you can and see the different methods that you can use to change things around, that you can use to work with them. But I just gave you a few examples for you to have a head start. So along with this, you have to watch the pre-recorded videos. And then when we come back in the next 2 weeks, we're going to look at more detailed advanced topics where we are headed to. So this is where this lesson ends. If anybody has any question, you can ask now.
No question. I would like to say thank you because I saw that question and I did not know how to answer it. So thank you very much.
Okay, much welcome.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Okay.
I want to understand the reason we have the new variable in the string. That's where we have new string equals to an empty string. We also have to save the variable in the variable key.
Okay, the logic behind it.
Yes.
Okay. So the question is like, you want to create a dictionary, right? That takes a sentence that we have here, looks at the sentence, use each letter in a sentence as a key, and then use the number of occurrence, the frequency in which that letter appears in that sentence has the value. We don't know what the key and value is in advance, so we want to first of all create an empty dictionary. You can name this anything you want, so we created an empty dictionary and store it in the variable. So an empty dictionary is created with a pair of coily brace. You can use the dict method, but we use a pair of empty coily brace like this. So we have a new string variable and it holds a dictionary, but the dictionary does not contain any item. Now, what we are looking at is the sentence, right? We want to look at what we use as the keys in the sentence. We want to store the keys in a keys variable like this. We have a method called .keys like this in Python. So when you use the .keys, and we also have another method values. When we use .keys here, new string .keys, it means that the keys will be stored in the keys variable. Anything you store here is going to be the key. When we are looping through the key, we use an iterator I. I is now going to be the value of that key. So when it comes here, first name, it iterates here first name. When the time it gets here, it looks at the value Mildred. So the ith position here of the new string is going to have that value there. So that's why we use the if I in keys. We want to say new string I. So we're already looking at the keys that we have stored here, but we've not stored any key, it is empty. But we still use if I in keys to cover for when we start storing value, so it will increment the value rather than duplicate it. So if I already exists in the keys, just increase the frequency there. New string I plus equal 1. That's like new string I is equal to new string I plus 1. So let's make it longer version. Like that. So you want to add 1 to the frequency of that value. Else, you just want to leave it to remain as 1. If it doesn't exist already, the value of that key is equal to 1. If it exists, add 1 to it. So that's the logic here. There are many ways you can think about this and do it in different ways. So when you do it like this, you still get the same answer. I don't know if you understand.
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah. So these are the kind of things that we can do with dictionaries. The pre-recorded videos just have basics. And when we come for our live classes, I didn't want to go too deep in the first live class so you don't get overwhelmed. But most of our live classes will be using examples like this, while your pre-recorded videos will have videos that takes you through the littlest, tiniest details of that topic before we go into using examples to expand on the topics. Okay? So any more questions?
Just one. Will this recording be sent in the group? I kind of missed the beginning a little bit.
Yes, I'll send it as soon as it's available. It will be on YouTube, and I'll send the link in the group chat.
Thank you.
All right. So have a nice rest of the day. If you have any problem, you can book a one-on-one. You can ask questions in the chat. You can send emails. All right. So thank you, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.